What if I told you there's a super simple pattern you can learn on your fretboard that'll automatically make your solos more melodic? And not only that, but it'll add a dimension of musical maturity to your playing overall. And somehow it eluded me for a lot of years. I mean, it took me forever to finally stumble upon this pattern and then realize that it could instantly upgrade my playing. So in this video, I'm gonna share this pattern with you, and I'm gonna show you how to use it in both a major and a minor key. Now, if you've seen my lessons before, you know that I love really simple patterns. 3, 4, 5, 6 note patterns that are really straightforward, that you can get a lot of melodic content out of if you really milk the notes. And on top of that, something that you can multiply across multiple octaves. Now, in the beginning of the video, I was using this pattern over a G major backing track, and this is essentially what I was playing. So 3 octaves of this same 4-note pattern. Like, let's start here on the low octave. 1, 2, 3, 4. So what I'm essentially outlining here is a G major 7 arpeggio. These are all particular notes or chord tones that are found within a G major 7 chord. So it actually starts on the major 7. Right? So in this case, it'd be 2nd fret of the low E string. And then we have the root, which would be G, right? 3rd fret on the low E string. Then you have the 3rd, which is B. This is the 2nd fret on the A string. And then the 5th, which is D, 5th fret on the A string, right? So we have F sharp, G, B, D, or a major 7, root, major 3rd, 5th. So those notes, even though this doesn't look like an arpeggio pattern, it's still highlighting those same exact notes. And we can get a whole lot of really nice melodic tension just by utilizing those. And you also find that there is a triad contained within there, right? A root, a 3rd, and a 5th. So those 3 notes are essentially what make up a G major triad. And then with that major 7, right, that's how we get that G major 7 tonality. So that's what we're doing here. We're highlighting a G major 7 arpeggio in this simple 4-note pattern. So this is the low octave of it, right? So 2, 3 on low E, 2, 5 on A. Then if we were to bring this an octave up to the middle octave position here, we would be on the 4th fret with our 1st finger, and then 5th fret, and then 4th fret, 7th fret on the G string. Notice how it's the exact same notes as, right, just an octave up. And we do the same thing up to a higher octave right here. So we have 7th fret on the B string, then 8th fret, and then we have 7th fret on the high E string, then 10th fret. That's all I was doing. Like in the beginning of the video, when I was playing that backing track, all I was doing was staying right within that pattern. What I would actually recommend that you do is start with 1 octave. Let's say the middle octave here, right? Starting with that middle octave, let's just mess around with those 4 notes, play them in a different order, add some guitar linguistics like slides, bends, vibratos, that kind of thing, and just see like what different sort of phrasing we can come up with. Because this is gonna be a really good way to venture out of the typical rut. So if there's a specific scale or set of scales that you default to, right? And you're just trying to bust out of just hearing that same tonality over and over again. This is a great way to get out of that, especially when you limit yourself to the pattern. Like I said, I could have gone and just used other scales when I was playing, over the backing track in the beginning of the video, but I forced myself to come up with interesting ideas with these 3, with this one pattern across 3 octaves, and even found ways to connect the dots, like bring in 1 octave into the other and back and forth and stuff, to just like really find a lot of different kinds of notes and different kinds of melodic inspiration. So if I were to take this middle octave here, right, instead of just playing it linear, like up and down, which again, you don't want to fall into that trap like you would any other scale potentially. So you want to sit there and then just kind of listen to the notes, like, just kind of hear how they all relate to each other. And you can just take a couple of notes at a time and create nice phrases like, I like that. Super simple. Sounds kind of jazzy even. And I'm just throwing in some slides and vibrato, you know, hammer-ons, you know, pull-offs, that kind of thing. You know, I mean, that major 7 is a source of a lot of nice tension. And like, let's say if I were up here in this upper octave, what I'm doing is like, I'll finish off a phrase by landing on a note in a different octave, right? So I went from now to the middle octave of the pattern, and then I can move on to the lower octave. So you can connect the dots that way. You just want to really force yourself to keep those notes sounding interesting and find creative ways to navigate them without feeling like you need to add more notes, right? If you start feeling like I'm out of notes, I need more notes, that's not really what's happening. You just need new ideas. You just need new ideas how to approach these same notes. There's different things that you can do. Like I said, the guitar linguistic stuff, but you can also like mess around with the order of the notes, you know? Like that's a pretty sounding way to play it, and it's not linear at all. I always like, you know, whenever I have like a between two notes, you know, that span across like 4 frets, I like to do the Santana thing. You know, it just sounds really nice. And again, with all those, with the different kind of chord tones that you're messing with, especially that major 7, it's got a lot of tension there. So really live in those notes for a while. It's a great exercise for your ear training, and it also just builds your repertoire as a melodic player overall. And by the way, the backing track I was using, you can find on the Guitar Mastering Method YouTube channel if you search our backing track playlist. This one is called Rock Ballad in G Major. So I'm going to throw it back on again, and I'm going to mess around with these patterns just to demonstrate one more time how well these can work. So there I just forced myself to stay within that pattern and was able to craft a pretty decent, coherent solo, I think. And now that we've gone over how to use this pattern in a major key, let's talk about using it in a minor key. Oh, but hey, real quick, if you got a second, be sure to hit that like button and consider subscribing to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. It really helps us out, and it lets us know if you want to see more lessons just like this one, and we'd be more than happy to give them to you. Now you may be thinking, if we're outlining a major arpeggio with this pattern, how would that work in a minor key exactly? That would be a really good question, and the answer to that is by the use of relative major. So every minor key has a relative major, and every major key has a relative minor. So all that to say is, if we're dealing with a minor key, we can find its relative major to actually outline notes within that particular relative major chord or scale that would actually work perfectly over the relative minor. Now, if none of that made any sense to you, it's okay. We don't need to dive into the theory of it, but just understand that every minor key is a relative major and every major key is a relative minor. That's just the rule across the board, right? So if we're talking about a major arpeggio, but we're using it in a minor key, we're gonna find the thing that really connects the dots for it by finding the relative major to that minor key. So let's take for example, the key of A minor. So if I wanted to find its relative major, I would just need to do this. We would start with the root note, you know, on the low E string, which in this case would be A, since we're talking about A minor. So the root note right here is A. And Now, if we want to find the relative major, all we got to do is go up 3 frets, 1, 2, 3, and that note right there becomes the root note to the relative major. So that goes from an A to a C. So all that to say is in the key of A minor, C major is the relative major. So essentially both of these chords can share the same notes and sound good. And if we were to adapt this major arpeggio shape to accommodate a minor key, all we have to do is move the placement of it to the relative major. So remember when we were talking about in the key of G, let's just backtrack for a second. We were talking about the key of G, and we were going over this pattern. The root note is contained within that pattern, right? But not so when we're dealing with it in a minor key. There actually isn't a root note in the case of A minor. There isn't an A note contained within the pattern, but there is a C, which is the root note to the relative major, right? So that kind of helps us connect the dots, like I say, as far as finding that relative major and adapting this pattern to that. So if we were to play this pattern over a C major, which again is the relative major to A minor, it would be right here on the fretboard. So 7th fret, 8th fret on the low E string, and then 7th fret, 10th fret on the A string. Now see, it's still a major 7, root, major 3rd, and 5th if we're talking about a C major 7, right? We're now highlighting a C major 7 arpeggio, but we're going to get away with using that over an A minor key because it's they're relatives of each other, right? So that relation is how we're able to make this work. So that's the low octave for that pattern. The middle octave is right here. We have 9th fret, 10th fret on the D string, 9th fret, 12th fret on the G string, right? And then finally we have 12, 13 on the B string and 12, 15 on the high E string. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up a minor blues backing track in the key of A minor, and you're going to hear for yourself that this can actually work. There's a whole lot of tension there. It was especially challenging to force myself to stay within that pattern. Now, this obviously can work perfectly with other scales that would work under a minor blues like that, like A minor pentatonic, for example. It would work perfectly to add some, just some additional flavor and some additional notes so that you can punctuate your phrases a little bit differently. Like there were times where I really wanted to get out of that pattern, but I forced myself to stay there just to really live in those notes, like I said, and you could hear the tension. And some of it was pretty good. Some of it was good tension, at least to me. It kind of made me just like perk up a little bit and just like, ooh, that's cool. It tickles the ears a little bit, right? Now, if you were to get comfortable with a pattern like that and using it in this type of context, then imagine when you start incorporating, let's say like the minor pentatonic scale that you may already know, it's going to just add a whole new dimension of melodic capabilities, and it'll actually make your soloing sound a lot more musical because it's not just going to be about just wailing on the pentatonic scale, which is great. There's nothing wrong with it. I will play the pentatonic scale till I die. But it's fun to throw in little differences there that can just work in tandem, so it just all creates this really nice effort to just sound really musical and mature. If I were to play phrases that combine the arpeggio pattern with the minor pentatonic scale, we can get some stuff like this. So now you see how that simple 4-note major arpeggio pattern can really unlock your guitar playing. And in this video, we've only seen a glimpse of the power that you have using this pattern in just 2 keys. But what if I told you that there's a simple way to learn all of the keys so you can use this pattern in all of them, major and minor? Well, it just so happens that I have the very thing that's gonna get you there. And since you've made it to the end of this video, I gotta make good on my promise and give you that free gift I was talking about. Remember that? Well, here it is. This bad boy right here is your free lesson on how to instantly solo in any key. Any key, you name it, even the weird ones, you'll be able to solo in it. Just be sure to click here to claim your copy or check that link in the description box. Sometimes it just takes a simple concept to really elevate your playing to new heights. And when I learned that, it made understanding the work of my favorite guitar players that much easier. And there's something really gratifying about being able to listen to your favorite guitar players and understand exactly what it is they're doing.